They say for richer or for poorer is the easiest vow to make when the champagne is flowing and the bank account is full. But what happens when the money disappears? Does the love stay? Or does it quietly slip out the back door while you're not looking? Honey, sit down, because today's story doesn't have a simple villain. It has two flawed people, a marriage built on shaky ground, and a test that revealed truths neither of them was ready to face. This is the story of Marcus and Jessica, and by the end, I want you to ask yourself, who was really wrong here? Because the answer might not be as simple as you think. Let me introduce you to Marcus first. Marcus was a self-made man. He grew up in a cramped apartment in Queens with a single mother who worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. He remembered the embarrassment of wearing secondhand clothes to school. He remembered the sound of bill collectors calling, and he swore on everything that he would never be poor again. So he built a logistics company from nothing. 14-hour days, missed birthdays, weekends that bled into weekdays. By the time he was 38, Marcus had everything he ever dreamed of: the penthouse, the cars, the respect. But somewhere along the way, he forgot how to be present for anything except work. Now let me tell you about Jessica. Here's what Marcus didn't fully understand about his wife. She grew up poor too, maybe even poorer than him. Her father left when she was 6. Her mother bounced between minimum wage jobs and bad boyfriends who sometimes paid rent and sometimes didn't. Jessica remembered going to bed hungry. She remembered the lights getting shut off in winter. She remembered wearing the same shoes until her toes bled. So when she met Marcus at a charity gala 8 years ago, she wasn't just attracted to his money, she was attracted to his safety. He represented a world where the lights always stayed on, where the refrigerator was always full, where nobody could ever hurt her again. Was that love? Maybe not entirely, but it wasn't nothing either. They got married 5 years ago. Big wedding, beautiful ceremony. And for the first 2 years, things were good, really good. They laughed together. They traveled. They talked about having kids someday. But then Marcus's company started expanding. And expanding. And expanding. The man who used to bring her coffee in bed started leaving before sunrise and coming home after midnight. The man who used to ask about her day started checking emails mid-conversation. The romantic dinners became room service eaten alone. The weekend getaways became canceled plans and apologies. Jessica tried to talk to him about it, more than once. She would say, "Marcus, I feel like I never see you anymore." And he would respond, "Babe, I'm building this for us. Just give me another year. Then I'll slow down." But another year came. And another. And Marcus never slowed down. So Jessica filled the emptiness with other things. Shopping, renovations, trips with friends. It wasn't fulfillment, it was distraction. But Marcus never noticed the difference. He just saw the credit card statements and felt a strange resentment building in his chest. She spends my money but doesn't appreciate my sacrifice, he thought. He works constantly, but doesn't see me disappearing, she thought. 2 people, both starving, both convinced the other one was full. The trouble started on a Tuesday evening. Marcus came home earlier than usual, only 9 o'clock instead of 11. He walked into the kitchen looking exhausted, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. The merger he'd been working on for 8 months was falling apart. He said, "Jess, I'm home. It was a rough day. The merger is looking shaky, like really shaky." Jessica was sitting at the counter, scrolling through her phone, looking at fabric samples the decorator had sent. She had been waiting all week for these samples. The living room renovation was the first project she'd felt excited about in months. It made her feel like she had some control over something. She heard him, but she didn't hear the weight behind his words. He always said work was hard. He always sounded stressed, and he always fixed it. That's what Marcus did. So she replied, "That sounds stressful, babe. Hey, did you transfer the deposit for the decorator? She needs it by tomorrow or we lose our slot." Marcus stopped cold. He waited for her to look up, to ask if he was okay, to offer something, anything beyond logistics. She didn't. He said, more firmly, "Jess, I said the company might be in real trouble." She finally looked up, but there was impatience in her eyes. She said, "Marcus, you always figure it out. You're the CEO. That's what you do. I'm sorry you're stressed, but I really need to confirm this decorator. Can you just check if the transfer went through? Now, here's where I need you to pause with me. Was Jessica being cold? Yes. But was she also a woman who had spent years being told just one more year while her husband disappeared into his office? A woman who had learned that Marcus's work stress was a constant background noise that never actually changed anything. A woman who had numbed herself because hoping for his attention had become too painful. Also, yes. But Marcus didn't see any of that context in the moment. All he saw was a wife who didn't care. All he heard was a woman who only wanted his money. And in that moment, something inside him cracked. The next day, Marcus went to see his old friend David. David was a divorce attorney. He had seen hundreds of marriages fall apart, and he had grown cynical about love in general. When Marcus told him what happened, David leaned back in his chair and said, "Classic. She's showing you who she is, man." Marcus shook his head. He said, "I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe she was just having a bad day." David replied, "Then test it. You've been talking about stepping back from the company anyway, right? The board has been discussing a buyout of the tech division. What if you pretended it all went wrong? Tell her you lost everything. See what she does." Marcus hesitated. Something about it felt wrong, manipulative, unfair. But the knot in his stomach, the one that had been growing for months, was screaming at him. He needed to know, so he agreed. But here's what Marcus didn't consider. A test only works if both people are starting from the same place. Jessica wasn't starting from a place of security. She was starting from a place of years of emotional neglect, masked by financial comfort. The money wasn't just money to her, it was the only proof she had left that Marcus still cared enough to provide something. Take that away suddenly, without warning. And you're not just testing love, you're triggering survival mode. The stage was set. Marcus came home early the next day, carrying a cardboard box with some picture frames in it, the universal symbol of "I just got fired." He had practiced his defeated posture in the car. He took a breath and walked through the door. He called out, "Jessica, can you come here, please?" She walked in from the living room, holding a cup of tea. She saw the box. She saw his face, and something in her chest seized. She asked, "Marcus, what's going on? Why are you home?" He sat heavily on the sofa. He put his face in his hands, and then he told her, "It's over, Jess. The audit found problems I didn't know about. The board voted me out. They're freezing the accounts. The lawyers are saying we might lose everything. The house, the cars. We might have to move into my mom's old apartment in Queens until I can figure something out." The room went silent. Jessica didn't move. Her face went pale. And here's the thing, Marcus was watching for love. He was watching for her to rush to his side, to tell him everything would be okay, to prove that she wanted him and not his money. But Jessica wasn't feeling love in that moment. She was feeling something much more primal. Terror. Queens. A small apartment, no money. Every memory of her childhood came flooding back. The hunger, the cold, the instability, the fear. She wasn't thinking about Marcus. She was thinking about survival. And she hated herself for it. But she couldn't stop. She said quietly, "What do you mean, lose everything? How is that possible? You own the company." Marcus replied, "Not anymore. There are liability issues. It's complicated. I need you right now, Jess. I need to know we're okay, that we can get through this together." Jessica walked to the window. Her hands were trembling. She was trying to find the loving words, the supportive words, the words a good wife would say. But all she could hear was her mother's voice from 25 years ago, saying, "We're going to be okay, baby," right before they got evicted for the third time. She turned around and said something she would regret for the rest of her life. "I don't know if I can do this, Marcus. I don't know if I can go back to that." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't a sneer. It was honest. And it was devastating. Marcus felt his heart drop. He asked, "Go back to what?" She said, "To being poor, to being scared all the time. I know that makes me a terrible person. I know you want me to say it doesn't matter, but I spent my whole childhood being poor. Marcus, I can't. I don't know if I can do it again." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Over the next 3 days, Marcus continued the act. He sold his watch. He started packing boxes. He waited to see if Jessica would come around. And Jessica, she was spiraling. She didn't pack her bags. She didn't call anyone. She just froze. She walked through the house like a ghost, picking up objects and putting them down. Sometimes Marcus would catch her sitting alone in the dark, staring at nothing. One night, He heard her on the phone with her mother. She was crying. She said, "Mom, I don't know what to do. I know I should be there for him. I know that. But I'm so scared. I'm so scared of going back to how things were. And the worst part is, I don't even know if he would be there for me either. He hasn't really been here for years. Mom, he just pays for things. That's not the same." Marcus stood outside the door, listening, and for the first time, he heard something other than betrayal in her voice. He heard pain. On the fifth day, Marcus was sitting in the living room when Jessica came downstairs. She was dressed, but simply, no makeup, no jewelry. She looked exhausted. She sat down across from him and said, "I need to say something." Marcus waited. She continued, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about who I've become, and I don't like it. I don't like that my first reaction to your news was fear instead of love. I don't like that I've been filling my life with things instead of us." She paused. Her voice broke a little. "But I also need you to hear something, Marcus. You haven't been here, really here, in years. You come home, but you're not present. You provide money, but you don't provide. I've been lonely in this marriage for a long time, and I think I used the lifestyle to avoid feeling it." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but she held up her hand. "Let me finish. I'm not saying that excuses how I reacted. It doesn't. I should have held you. I should have said we'd figure it out together. But I'm asking you to understand where it came from. And I'm asking myself to be better. If we have to move to Queens, then we move to Queens. I don't want to be the person who leaves when things get hard. That's not who I want to be." She was crying now. Marcus sat there, watching his wife, truly seeing her for the first time in years. And he realized something that made his stomach turn. He had tested her at her lowest capacity. He had spent years withdrawing emotionally, then staged a crisis and judged her for not responding perfectly. He had set her up to fail. Was her reaction flawed? Yes. But was she the only villain in this story? Not even close. He took a breath. And he told her the truth. "Jess, I need to tell you something. I wasn't fired. I was offered a buyout for the tech division. A good one. $12 million. The deal closed yesterday." Jessica stared at him. Confusion flickered across her face, then realization, then something harder to name. "You lied to me? This was a test?" Marcus nodded. He said, "I needed to know if you loved me or just my money. But now I'm realizing I haven't given you much of me to love. I gave you a credit card and called it a marriage." The silence between them was heavy. Jessica wiped her eyes. She said, slowly, "So what you're telling me is that we've both been failing this marriage, just in different ways." "Yes." She laughed, then a small, sad laugh. "That's almost worse, Marcus. That's almost worse than if you'd just been right about me being a gold digger. Because now we're both guilty, and I don't know where that leaves us. Here's the truth, honey. Marcus and Jessica didn't fall into each other's arms that day. There was no magical reconciliation. The trust had been broken on both sides, hers by reacting with fear, his by deceiving her in the first place. They sat together for a long time in that living room. They talked more honestly than they had in years. They admitted things they had never said out loud, and by the end of the night, they made a decision. They would try, really try. Not for the money, not for the lifestyle, but for the two scared kids from poor families who had found each other and then gotten lost. They started couples therapy the following week. Marcus actually reduced his hours for real this time. Jessica started working with a therapist of her own, unpacking the childhood fears she had never processed. It was hard, harder than either of them expected. 6 months later, they were still together. Not perfectly, not easily, but honestly, the marriage Marcus thought was about money turned out to be about something much more complicated. Two people who had stopped seeing each other, using a test that forced them both to look in the mirror. So here's my question for you. Who was wrong in this story? Was it Jessica for reacting with fear instead of love? Was it Marcus for testing his wife instead of talking to her? Was it both of them for letting the marriage crumble quietly while pretending everything was fine? There's no easy answer. And maybe that's the point. Real relationships aren't about finding a villain to blame. They're about two imperfect people deciding over and over again to to stay and do the work. Would you have forgiven Jessica? Would you have forgiven Marcus? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make you think, not just react. Until next time, be careful who you test. You might not like what you learn about yourself.